Hey, I'm Toasted, and welcome back to the content rabbit hole you didn't know you needed. You might know me from that time I ranked every game ever made with a source engine, or from when I cracked open the LiftTech engine, and there's a full playlist of those ranking videos on my channel. So if you have time and interest in these types of things, check it out. Today we're diving deep into the sweaty armpit of early 2000s game development. The Unreal Engine 2 era. Yeah, that engine. The one that powered classics like Unreal Tournament 2004, Splinter Cell Chaos Theory, and whatever the hell Marine Sharpshooter 4 was trying to be. Some of these games are legendary, some of them are cult gems, and others feel like they were developed on a stolen school computer during detention. But before we jump in, let's talk about how I rank these games. The rankings are mostly based on my own opinion, as always, because I actually played or did research on all of these games. But I did look at user reviews and critic scores just to, balance things out a bit, so I don't make huge mistakes. Some games got points for innovation, some for polish, some just for being entertaining trash. And others, well, they got punted to the bottom for crimes against humanity and gaming. Now, before we begin, if you want to support this madness and get 1 week early access to all my ranking videos, you can join my channel right now. Everyone who joins will have their video suggestions prioritized, get a shiny badge next to their name, and have their name immortalized at the end of each video, as a legend who helped me make these videos possible. Also, there is a Discord server, link in the description below. So let's kick things off with position 77 to 61, the lowest of the low. The jankiest, the ugliest, your cousin got this for €2 and thought it was cool tier. Day of the Zombie is what happens when you take Left 4 Dead, remove all the fun, charm and quality, then duct tape it together with a bunch of Land of the Dead zombie assets. It's a spiritual sequel to Land of the Dead Road to Fiddler's Green, which already wasn't exactly setting brains on fire, and somehow this manages to be worse. We got bland environments, a story written by what I assume was ChatGPT 0.1, and gameplay so stiff it makes Quake 1 enemies look like geniuses. I don't even know who this game was for. Probably a GameStop bargain bin that paid you to take it. Same developer. This game is so bad, it could qualify as a war crime. It's technically a sniper game, but the only thing you'll be targeting is your own patience. Huge dead maps where you run in straight line for 5 minutes before shooting one enemy who's standing still like he just disconnected. Your spotter is about as useful as a rubber knife in a shootout. The ragdolls glitch harder than a Bethesda NPC on bath salts. And the AI? Well, they whisper threats from 200 meters away and then just kinda stand there. If this game taught me anything, it's that hell isn't hot. It's just endlessly grey and trench-shaped. Okay, so listen, there are bad games. And then there's DMZ North Korea. Imagine Call of Duty if it was made by someone who only saw screenshots of Call of Duty once, while drunk. The animations are broken, the gameplay is stiff, and the environments that make you question whether North Korea is just one endlessly looping corridor, which is definitely possible. It tries to be a gritty war shooter, but ends up feeling like a school project made entirely out of stolen assets and regret. Who could publish this crap? Why does it have proper publisher? You'll spend more time clipping through the ground than fighting enemies. It's not offensive enough to be funny bad, just depressingly mediocre. Outlaw Chopper is what happens when you try to write the biker fantasy of Sons of Anarchy, but end up crashing into the curb before even leaving the garage. You'd think a game about building and riding custom choppers would at least nail the vibe, but nope. The bike physics feel like you're gliding on a bar of soap, and the gameplay has all the excitement of waiting in line to get your driver's license. The customization is shallow, the missions are copy-paste fetch quests, and the presentation screams PlayStation 2 launch title. But worse, not even ironically fun, just dull, broken and forgotten, like a flat tire on a highway. Look, compared to Marine Sharpshooter 4, this one's basically Game of the Year, but that's not saying much. It's like graduating from moldy bread to slightly stale toast. The game reuses environments like it bought them in bulk from a war-themed IKEA. And the AI alternates between sees you through walls and forgot how to breathe. It's not offensively broken, just painfully generic. It's the FPS equivalent of someone whispering pew pew in a monotone voice. And yet, somehow it's still better than what came after. Tragic. This game wants to be Call of Duty, but it ends up feeling more like a bootleg DVD of Navy SEALs bought in a gas station. The level design is lazy, the gunplay has all the impact of a wet sponge, and the enemy AI is only threatening in how much they waste your time. Basically, you walk into a room, you get shot by a dude who was just T-posing behind a crate, and then shoot him. It's the definition of shovelware shooter. Cheap, dull, and incredibly forgettable. If you made it to the credits, you deserve a real combat medal. What would this list be without more groove games? And this time, they gave us a low-budget World War II shooter, and well, they succeeded, I guess. Road to Berlin is technically playable, but it's basically one long corridor with Nazi mannequins randomly placed every few feet. You shoot them, they flop over like ragdolls possessed by demons, and then you do it again for 2 hours. The sound design feels like someone recorded real guns using a kazoo, and the whole game feels like pure PowerPoint energy. There's fun bad, and then there's please uninstall me bad. This is the latter. What if I told you Road to Berlin got a reskin and was released again in the same year with a slightly more palm trees and the same broken everything? That's Iwo Jima for you. It's the exact same mess in a different time zone. You'd think storming beaches would be at least epic, but this game somehow made one of the most intense battles in human history feel like taking a stroll through a junkyard. The shooting is limp, the levels are brain dead, and the only real challenge is trying not to laugh at how terrible this game is. It's Road to Berlin 1.5, now with some extra brown. Desert Thunder is the kind of game that feels like it was made entirely in Microsoft Paint and programmed over a weekend by a guy who just discovered what tanks are. You get plopped into a giant empty desert, you drive around slowly like you're delivering groceries, and you occasionally blow up enemies, who may or may not have been rendered with more than 6 polygons. The story is non-existent, the gameplay is as stiff as cardboard in a sauna, and the only thunder here is the sound of your own boredom echoing in the void. So basically this first part is just groove games. That's how terrible they were. They were basically City Interactive before City Interactive. And if you watched my Liftech videos, you know what I mean. With a name like Close Quarters Conflict, you'd expect intense indoor firefights and tight tactical gameplay, right? No! What you actually get is janky movement, soulless gunplay, and AI that behaves like it pre-gamed before deployment. Every mission feels like a failed team building exercise at a corporate retreat. The UI is ugly, the graphics already look dated in 2006, and the multiplayer, it doesn't even deserve a eulogy. This game is about as close to a conflict as 2 nails racing to the end of a breadstick. Ah yes, Vietnam. A war that deserves better than whatever this was. Marine Heavy Gunner is a game where you mow down wave after wave of brain-dead enemies through jungle corridors so linear. Even Google Maps would say, dude, relax. You'd think being a heavy gunner would at least feel powerful. But no, the recoil is floaty, the audio is muffled, terrible mix, and the explosions have all the impact of a party pooper. Add in bugs, bad scripting, and a plot you could summarize on a napkin, and you've got a shooter that forgets to shoot for anything. Licensed from a George Romero movie and immediately buried in a shallow grave. Road to Fiddler's Green is like if someone watched Dawn of the Dead on a VHS tape that had been taped over 40 times and said, I could make that worse. Zombies shamble towards you in slow motion, your weapons feel like pool noodles, and the graphics? Yikes. The worst part? The game tries to have atmosphere. When I played this game for the first time as a kid, those first few levels scared me a lot. This game was too scary for me as a kid, so I guess it has one good thing if you're a kid, but playing it nowadays, it feels like being unintentionally hilarious instead. It's one of those so bad it's maybe accidentally memorable games, like Postal 2 without the charm, or budget. Ooh, Spider-Man 2 on PC! The cruelest bait and switch in gaming history. While console players were out there swinging through Manhattan like acrobatic gods, we got stuck with a version that feels like it was made for toddlers on a budget laptop. No open world, no physics-based swinging, just basic web zips in levels so linear they make hallways jealous. The combat is button mashy, the voice acting is phoned in, and the only thing this game captures from the movie is the title. Honestly, it's a crime this shares a name with one of the best superhero games of all time. Guys, have you ever wanted to shoot mutant chickens while surrounded by get-it-done energy and deeply uncomfortable Southern stereotypes? No? Too bad, because this game exists. Redneck Kentucky is absurd and occasionally funny, but mostly just dumb. You shoot poultry with terrible hitboxes in generic farm settings while the game desperately tries to be quirky. It's like Postal 2 met Chicken Run in a moonshine-filled fever dream, then tripped and fell down a flight of stairs. An ironically good time for about 10 minutes, when your brain starts leaking out of your ears. The gate of the world was unfortunately locked, and what we got instead was a half-baked sequel that nobody really asked for. While the original Ragnarok Online built a massive cult following, Gate of the World stumbled out of the gate and face-planted into mediocrity. Clunky animations, awkward transitions to 3D, and a general identity crisis defined this one. It was ambitious, sure, but it played like a fan remake gone wrong. Gravity eventually scrapped the entire thing and rebooted it, which says everything. Still, some folks managed to have a good time in between crashes and balance issues. Best proof of how unsuccessful this game was is that it never came out of open beta. It got cancelled before full release. Warpath is like Unreal Tournament's less attractive cousin who really wants to play too, but keeps tripping over their own shoelaces. It's a sci-fi arena shooter with generic weapons, uninspired maps, and AI that oscillates between murder machine and drooling toddler. The core movement and shooting mechanics aren't awful, thanks Unreal Engine, but nothing about it stands out. It feels like leftover assets glued together with duct tape and some ropes. Not the worst time ever, but there are 100 better ways to scratch your FPS itch. Imagine if someone tried to remake Counter-Strike from memory, but they were drunk, half asleep, and using a keyboard from '95. That's Terror Strike. It's a clunky European budget shooter where every texture looks like it was found on a GeoCities page. The AI will either stand still and stare at you, or shoot you through walls from across the map. The gameplay feels like tossing wet socks at your enemies. It's hilariously bad in all the right ways. And for a very specific audience, this is high camp bargain bin bliss. And honestly, I kind of love that it exists. Licensed movie tie-ins often get roasted, but Shark Tale at least nails the colorful underwater aesthetic of the film. The missions are a bit all over the place, from dancing to delivering items, but it's varied enough that kids at the time could stay entertained. The voice clips and music keeps the movie's vibe alive, and while it won't blow you away in gameplay depth, it's a cheerful little slice of DreamWorks nostalgia. What happens in Vegas should stay off a PSP. Let's be real, squeezing Rainbow Six Vegas onto a PSP was never going to be a perfect translation. But credit where it's due, they tried to bring tactical shooting to handheld, complete with cover mechanics and familiar settings. Sure, the controls are a bit cramped and the visuals take a hit, but for fans who wanted to play Vegas on the bus, it scratched that portable counter-terrorism itch. Splinter Cell Essentials had a tricky job. Condense stealth-heavy gameplay onto a PSP without losing the core spy fantasy. And while it's clunkier than the console entries, it does deliver classic Sam Fisher moments, complete with gadgets, sneaking, and night vision glory. It even tries to fill in some story gaps for fans of the series. Not perfect, but it gave handheld players a taste of that Splinter Cell espionage goodness. It's a kids movie tie-in, but Open Season is bright, colorful, and keeps the humor light-hearted, matching the tone of the film. It mixes platforming with minigame style challenges, and while it's clearly aimed at younger players, it serves that audience well. It's short, simple, and safe fun. Sometimes that's all you need in a rainy afternoon game. And this one's a bit of a heartbreaker. While the console versions of Shrek 2 were fun little co-op brawlers, the PC version is not that. It's a completely different game, more of a budget platformer with stiff animations and clunky design. But hey, the environments are colorful, the music's decent, and for younger players at the time, it might have hit the right mix of fairy tale comfort and easy gameplay. Still, compared to its console siblings, this ogre definitely skipped the leg day. Surf's Up surprised me a little. It's a penguin surfing racing game, and while that sounds like a fever dream, the game does have smooth animation and some chill beach vibes. It's clearly geared toward a younger audience, and if you're expecting intense mechanics or replayability, you'll be left cold. But as a simple short burst of fun with surprisingly decent water physics for the time, it's not awful. Just don't expect SSX with feathers. Devastation had big ambition for 2003. Gritty cyberpunk setting, squad mechanics, multiple paths, and a bold dystopian vibe. And you know what? Some of the level designs and atmosphere are genuinely cool. Unfortunately, it's dragged down by clunky controls, weird AI, and that early 2000s junk that hasn't aged well. It's one of those almost great games that tried hard but couldn't quite stick the landing. Still, you can tell the devs really cared, and that counts for something. A free-to-play military shooter with a snowy twist? Arctic Combat went for that Call of Duty light feel and actually pulled off some decent visuals for the engine and solid weapon feedback. The maps weren't bad, and it had a following for a while, but it struggled to stand out in a sea of similar shooters, and lack of meaningful updates didn't help. It's competent, and at its peak was a fun distraction, just not enough to make it stick in your memory once the server shut down. Despite the name, Rogue Agent isn't a sequel to the legendary N64 game. It's more of an alternate universe Bond shooter where you play as a villain with a high-tech cybernetic eye. The campaign is a mixed bag, with some generic corridor shooting. But it has its moments with dual-wielded chaos and flashy set pieces. It's not the GoldenEye we grew up with, but it does deliver a unique twist on the Bond formula. Pariah. Well, it had all the makings of a cult FPS hit. Futuristic setting, weapon upgrades, and a built-in map editor. Unfortunately, it never fully lived up to its potential. Still, the customization options were ahead of their time, and the gunplay, while a bit clunky, had a satisfying punch. It's one of those games where you can see the great idea buried just under the surface. It's the best Groove Games game. This one's pure popcorn action. A straight-line globe-trotting shooter with explosions every 5 minutes. The story is cliché military thriller stuff, but the game keeps you moving with high-intensity firefights and plenty of Michael Bay energy. It's not deep, but if you wanted a turn-off brain, blow stuff up weekend FPS in 2004, this was it. On the 360, GRAW was a technical showcase. On the original Xbox, it was more like the scrappy cousin, a scaled-back version that still managed to keep the tactical, squad-based gameplay intact. You still get the gadgets, the coordinated assaults, and the feeling of being part of a military unit, even if it was visually a downgrade. For Xbox players who didn't make the jump to next gen yet, this was still a solid tactical fix. A sequel to the early 2000s MMO Priston Tale. This one tried to bring the fantasy grind into the Unreal Engine 2 era with prettier visuals and larger worlds. The art style was colorful, the combat had a nice weight to it, and there was a dedicated fanbase. But it couldn't quite keep up with the MMO heavy hitters of the time. Still, for players who wanted a more light-hearted anime-inspired alternative to World of Warcraft, it delivered. This PlayStation 2 exclusive rail shooter paired a sheriff and a death row inmate against zombies and cultists, playing out like a grindhouse buddy cop flick. Its big hook was true dual wielding. Each analog stick aimed a separate gun, letting you blast 2 enemies at once. It's clunky at times, the bosses can be brutal, and the graphics scream B-movie, but the co-op, wild camera angles, and pulpy soundtrack make it a hidden little oddity worth remembering. On PSP, Lethal Alliance was a third-person shooter with a focus on platforming and gadget use, letting you play as a Twi'lek mercenary teaming up with a customizable droid. The environments and music nailed the Star Wars feel, but the combat could get clunky. It's far from the best Star Wars game, but it had enough fan service moments to keep franchise fans happy. A first-person shooter set in the Wild West. This one stood out for its mix of shooting and card-based special abilities. The gameplay was a bit stiff, and the AI wasn't winning any awards, but the atmosphere was strong. Dusty towns, saloons, and a soundtrack dripping with spaghetti western vibes. For genre fans, it scratched a niche itch, even if it didn't become a classic. Build as the start of a massive sci-fi trilogy that never happened. Advent Rising had huge ambitions, cinematic storytelling, psychic powers, and even a script co-written by Orson Scott Card. The story was intriguing, the soundtrack was phenomenal, and the world building had potential. Unfortunately, bugs, awkward controls, and performance issues held it back. Still, for those who could look past the junk, it offered a unique space opera vibe that stuck with people. An MMORPG with a heavy PvE focus. Echo of Soul was colorful, easy to pick up, and perfect for players who wanted a more casual fantasy MMO. The Soul system for character growth added a little twist to the usual formula, and the world design was charming. It didn't exactly revolutionize the genre, but it found a niche audience and gave them a lot of content to grind through. Based on the 2004 movie, this game lets you switch between the 3 Baudelaire orphans, each with unique abilities for puzzle solving and exploration. It's clearly aimed at younger players, but the quirky charm of the source material shines through. Simple gameplay, sure, but it nails the atmosphere and does a decent job of translating the film's gloomy, yet whimsical tone. This one took the famous trading card game and turned it into a real-time arena battler. And it was way more intense than you might expect. Instead of playing cards on a table, you're directly summoning creatures and casting spells on a 3D battlefield. It was a fresh take that kept the core MTG flavor, though it split the fanbase. Purists missed the card-based strategy, while others loved the fast-paced dueling. We're starting this chunk with something you've probably never heard of, Pamoja Mutani. This was a Kenya exclusive co-op game made to teach teenagers about HIV prevention. Yeah, not your usual Unreal Engine 2 flex, but respect where it's due. It had a big open world Nairobi setting, minigames, and even a banging local hip-hop soundtrack. Did it play like a AAA masterpiece? No. Did it save lives? Potentially. So maybe I shouldn't have included this cause it's kind of a game, but not totally, and there are better games that it's ahead of, probably, maybe even a lot of them, but it did something special, so I couldn't force myself putting it into a low position, so sorry if you don't agree, but it's here, in 40th place. I think it's one of the most unique projects ever built on an engine like Unreal Engine 2. Next up, X-Steel. Imagine Gundam, but free to play, and online, and also shut down in 2010. This was NCSoft's attempt at a mech arena brawler, and while it was a little grindy, players loved the customization and anime-style giant robot chaos. It's gone now, but for a hot minute, it had a loyal fanbase. RIP to another MMO that lived fast, died young, and is now remembered on obscure YouTube clips. Then we've got America's Army, Rise of a Soldier. This was the Xbox attempt to bring the famous military propaganda series to consoles. And you know what? It wasn't half bad. The gameplay was more grounded than the run and gun shooters of the time, and it doubled down on the realism. Sometimes a little too much. It definitely wasn't Halo, but if you wanted slow tactical gameplay and a bootcamp simulator, this was your thing. At 37, The Chronicles of Spellborn, an MMO with unique ideas, like aiming-based combat instead of hotbars, and a painterly fantasy world that looked different from the usual World of Warcraft clones. Unfortunately, it launched half-baked, struggled to find players, and shut down a few years later. But hey, at least it tried something fresh, and some fans still remember it fondly. Think of it as the MMO that could have been. Let's rip the band-aid off Deus Ex, Invisible War. Following up one of the greatest PC games ever made is like being the little brother trying to dunk after Michael Jordan. It's not happening. The game simplified a lot of the systems, shrunk the maps, and left fans salty for years. But here's the thing. Judged on its own, not as a sequel to Deus Ex Original, it's still a decent cyberpunk shooter RPG. The story has interesting moral choices, the atmosphere was solid, and honestly, it aged a little better than people give it credit for. Still, if you played the first Deus Ex, you probably felt like this was a diet soda compared to the real thing. At 35, we've got Vanguard, Saga of Heroes. This was Brad McQuaid's post-EverQuest MMO, promising a massive seamless world with no loading screens. Also advanced crafting, diplomacy systems, basically the works. And to be fair, the ambition was insane. The execution, not so much. It launched buggy and finished and ran like your PC was trying to render the entire universe at once. Still, the hardcore MMO crowd respected what it was trying to do. If World of Warcraft was McDonald's, Vanguard was that weird local diner that burned down before anyone really tried it. Then we've got I Am Alive, a survival game that started as a big budget AAA project, got scrapped, and re-emerged years later as a smaller downloadable title. And honestly, it wasn't half bad. The stamina-based climbing mechanics were tense, the post-apocalyptic setting was bleak in a good way, and it really captured that barely hanging on vibe. Sure, it looked dated even at launch and had clunky combat, but the survival atmosphere carried it. A flawed gem, but one with real identity. At 33, Magna Carta, Tears of Blood. This Korean RPG hit PS2 with gorgeous art and a unique turn-based combat. The pacing was slow, the voice acting was, let's just say, painful, okay? But the character designs were absolutely stunning. Hyung Tae Kim's art carried this game hard. It's one of those cult JRPGs that some players swear by and others bounce off immediately. If you're into pretty anime boys with swords bigger than their torsos, this was your jam. And if you're not, well, it probably wasn't. At 32, we've got Red Steel, one of these big launch titles. Everyone thought the motion controls would turn this into the ultimate sword and gun experience. But instead it felt more like fighting with a wet broomstick. Still, it deserves credit for ambition. The mix of Yakuza shootouts and katana duels gave it some personality, and it showed off what the V could maybe do someday. Not a masterpiece, but a memorable part of that launch window hype. Next up, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban on PC. And let me clarify, this isn't the same game as the console version. The PC release was basically its own thing. More kid-friendly, more puzzle-oriented, and definitely less polished. But it captured the Hogwarts vibe pretty well, and younger fans had fun exploring the castle. It's clunky and simple, sure, but if you grew up with it, there's probably a lot of nostalgia here. At number 30, Men of Valor, a Vietnam War shooter from the same folks who gave us Medal of Honor, Allied Assault. It wasn't groundbreaking, but it had a real sense of grit. The jungle environments, the ambushes, the sense of danger. It captured the setting decently well. The controls and the AI could be rough, but it stood out by tackling a war that wasn't often covered in games at the time. Think of it as Medal of Honor with rice paddies and Hueys. And at 29, we've got Project Snowblind, which was originally planned as a spin-off of Deus Ex before it morphed into its own thing. You can definitely feel the DNA though, augmentations, tactical gadgets, and a futuristic setting. It didn't quite reach the depth of Deus Ex, but as a straightforward action shooter, it was pretty solid. Fast-paced, fun powers, and some great level variety. Honestly, one of those games that didn't set the world on fire, but deserves a little more credit than it gets. At 28, we've got Medal of Honor, Rising Sun. This one threw us into the Pacific Theater, starting with that epic Pearl Harbor mission that blew minds back in 2003. After that, it kind of went downhill with repetitive jungle missions and awkward AI, but let's be real, a lot of people still remember this one fondly for couch co-op and multiplayer. It wasn't the best Medal of Honor, but it had some memorable moments. And hey, at least it wasn't Medal of Honor Warfighter. Next up, Unreal 2, The Awakening. Expectations were sky high, and it didn't live up to them. It was slow, linear, and honestly kind of boring compared to the fast-paced madness of Unreal Tournament. But the visuals were jaw-dropping for the time, and the story at least tried to bring more depth to the Unreal universe. Not a classic, but not a total disaster either. It's the definition of a mixed bag. At number 26, Ghost Recon 2. This one was controversial because it was console only, and PC players felt completely left out, like me. Still, for Xbox and PS2, it was a solid tactical shooter that modernized the franchise with more action and cinematic flair. It leaned a little more Call of Duty than hardcore sim, which annoyed purists, but it also opened the series up to a wider audience. Definitely an important step in Ghost Recon's evolution. And at 25, we've got Splinter Cell Double Agent. Now, this one's tricky, because there were actually two completely different versions, one for Xbox, PS2, and another for Xbox 360, PC. Both were ambitious with a whole Sam Fisher goes undercover storyline, but both also had their flaws. The stealth was still satisfying, but the story was a bit uneven and some levels felt half-baked. Still, even at its weakest, Splinter Cell was better than most stealth games out there. At 24, we've got Brothers in Arms, Road to Hill 30. This wasn't just another World War II shooter, it slowed things down and made you think tactically, commanding squads instead of running and gunning. It really leaned into authenticity, with historically accurate battles and a focus on flanking rather than charging head-on. The shooting itself could feel a little clunky, but the emotional storytelling and squad-based gameplay made it stand out in a sea of generic World War II games. Next up, Unreal Championship. This was basically Unreal Tournament 2003 built for Xbox Live, and for a lot of players, it was their first taste of online console shooters. It didn't have the same depth as the PC version, but the fast-paced arena action was still addictive. Think of it as the scrappy little brother to Unreal Tournament. Not the star of the family, but still fun at parties. Oh boy, Postal 2. I had this game on my Unreal Engine 1 ranking, but after your guys' comments and doing more digging, I don't think I was wrong, but I don't think I was right either. It's more of Unreal Engine 2 than 1. In numbers it's technically 1, but that version was so close on the line that it looks way more like Unreal Engine 2, so it's here. And this one is infamous. It's crude, offensive, buggy, and yet somehow kind of brilliant in its own twisted way. You could play it straight, just doing your errands, or go completely unhinged and cause chaos everywhere. It pushes boundaries, sometimes for shock value, sometimes for satire, and while critics tore it apart, it became a cult classic. Love it or hate it, you'll never forget it. And at 21, Tribes, Vengeance. The Tribes series was all about jetpacks, skiing across maps, and massive online battles, and Vengeance kept that spirit alive. It also added a surprisingly solid single-player campaign, which was a huge surprise to me, and it was rare for arena shooters at the time. It didn't hit the same high as the original Star Siege Tribes, but the movement was smooth, the combat was fun, and the jetpacks were still the star of the show. This one's not just a game, it's literal propaganda that accidentally became kinda awesome. America's Army was developed by the US military to recruit players, but instead of being a cringe ad, it ended up being surprisingly authentic tactical shooter. It emphasized teamwork, communication, and discipline. No health packs, no Rambo nonsense, just methodical, realistic missions. Sure, it was basically Uncle Sam whispering, "Join the army, gamer." But as a free game in 2002 with great mechanics and solid graphics, it earned its place in history. Think of it as SWAT Force Serio's cousin that really wants you to enlist. After years of hiding in the shadows, Conviction turned Sam Fisher into a full-blown action hero. And honestly, it worked better than expected. The mark and execute system made you feel like a one-man execution squad, and the faster pacing gave the series new energy. It's not as stealth purist as the older games, but it's stylish. It's also cinematic and full of great storytelling moments. Plus, Michael Ironside's grizzled voice acting is peak tough dad energy. This was the game where Sam Fisher said, "You know what? I'm done sneaking. I'm angry now." Following up BioShock was like trying to make The Godfather Part 3 right after The Godfather 2. Expectations were brutal. But you know what? BioShock 2 pulled it off. You play as a Big Daddy, which flips the power dynamic completely. The atmosphere, plasmids, and combat all feel familiar yet refined. The story may not be as philosophical as the first, but the emotional core, especially the father-daughter theme, it hits hard. And that multiplayer mode? Surprisingly solid. It didn't reinvent Rapture, but it definitely reminded us why we loved being there. Now we're stepping into MMO territory, and Lineage 2 was a beast. Beautiful visuals for its time, huge castle sieges, and some of the most hardcore grinding you'll ever experience. It wasn't for casuals. This game demanded commitment, alliances, and sometimes even your sanity. But those who stuck with it were rewarded with massive PvP battles that felt truly epic. It became a phenomenon, especially in Asia, and helped define what a premium MMO looked like. Lineage 2 wasn't just a game, it was a lifestyle. One that probably cost players thousands of hours and maybe a few relationships. The Brothers in Arms series nailed something few World War II shooters did, making you care about your squad. Earned in Blood wasn't just another sequel, it expanded the first game's tactical gameplay with smarter AI, tougher missions, and an even grittier story. You weren't just running and gunning, you were coordinating suppressive fire, flanking enemies, and praying your guys didn't get shredded in the process. It had emotional weight. Also, historical accuracy was there, and there was gameplay that made Call of Duty look like a Michael Bay movie in comparison. It's war, but with brains and heart. If Brothers in Arms was tactical, Red Orchestra was downright brutal. This was realism turned up to 11. No crosshairs, no hand-holding, just pure, terrifying Eastern Front warfare. Every bullet mattered, every shot could kill, and every time you spawned, you questioned your life choices. It wasn't for everyone, but those who got it, they fell in love with its authenticity and atmosphere. You could feel the weight of every rifle, the chaos of every tank battle. It's like Arma's grim older brother, and it paved the way for Rising Storm and Squad. Is it a painful game? Yes. But it's also absolutely rewarding. What started as the Unreal Tournament 2004 mod turned into one of the most addictive co-op shooters ever made. Killing Floor took the wave-based survival concept and perfected it, letting you and your friends mow down hordes of creepy mutated freaks with an arsenal of glorious weapons. The game's dark British humor, heavy metal soundtrack, and bloody chaos made it an instant cult classic. It didn't need a deep story, just teamwork, good aim, and the will to survive. Few things are as satisfying as welding a door shut and blasting a flesh pound in the face. The game that redefined arena shooters. UT 2003 was fast, flashy, and pure adrenaline from start to finish. It introduced the movement system that made the series legendary, dodge jumps, wall flips, and shock combos that separated the pros from the noobs. The visuals blew minds back in 2002, showcasing just how powerful Unreal Engine 2 could be. Some fans argue UT99 had more soul, but 2003 was the turning point. The game that modernized the franchise and inspired countless arena shooters after it. This was multiplayer mayhem at its peak. Chaotic, skillful, and endlessly replayable. If Unreal Tournament was all about speed and style, Unreal Championship 2 said, "Hold my flak cannon, I'm about to get weird." Exclusive to the Xbox, it brought melee combat, third-person camera angles, and character-specific abilities into the arena shooter formula. It was absolutely risky, but it worked. It was bold, stylish, and pushed Unreal Engine 2 to its absolute limits on console hardware. Dual-bladed energy swords, lightning-fast reflexes, and over-the-top announcers. It was chaotic, experimental, and pure fun. This wasn't just another Unreal game, it was Unreal with swagger. The last great Splinter Cell, before Ubisoft locked Sam Fisher in the vault forever. Blacklist managed to blend stealth, action, and modern gadgets into something that appealed to both classic fans and newcomers. You could sneak through shadows, like a ghost, or go full assault with drones and silenced rifles. Your choice. The level design was brilliant, the co-op missions were intense, and it still looked damn good for an Unreal Engine 2 title pushing into 2013. It may have ditched Ironside's voice, but the gameplay spoke louder than words, or broken necks. Cel-shaded style, comic book panels, and conspiracy-driven storytelling. 13 was a visual revolution. At a time when every FPS was trying to look gritty and realistic, this game went full graphic novel. The story, about an amnesiac assassin framed for killing the US president, was pure spy thriller gold. The voice cast included David Duchovny and Adam West, the presentation was stylish as hell, and it oozed personality. Sure, the AI was a little dumb, but that aesthetic? Timeless. 13 wasn't just a shooter, it was art wrapped in bullets and betrayal. Stealth perfection. Thief Deadly Shadows gave players an entire city to sneak, steal, and skulk through, and it nailed the dark gothic atmosphere the series was known for. The lighting system was groundbreaking, the level design masterful, and the Shale Bridge Cradle mission, still one of the scariest moments in non-horror video game gaming history. It balanced stealth, exploration, and story in ways few games ever have. Playing as Garrett felt like being the ultimate anti-hero, stealing from nobles one moment, creeping through haunted asylums the next. This was immersive sim royalty, plain and simple. Pandora Tomorrow didn't reinvent the series, it refined it. Building on everything that made the first Splinter Cell great, it gave us smoother animations, better lighting, and some truly tense missions that made hiding in the shadows feel like an art form. But the real MVP here? The Spice vs Mercs multiplayer mode. One team sneaks, the other hunts. It was genius, asymmetrical, and way ahead of its time. It turned stealth into a sport, and even decades later, people still talk about it. Ubisoft had found their rhythm. This was stealth with brains, tension, and style. Before the tactical FPS genre was boiled down to hero shooters and flashy gadgets, Raven's Shield was the real deal. You planned missions, managed your team, and executed perfect breaches, or got shredded for rushing in like an idiot. Built on Unreal Engine 2, it looked sharp, ran well, and had that gritty Tom Clancy authenticity that made it feel more like a simulation than a game. This was the golden era of Rainbow Six, before Ubisoft traded tactics for TikTok montages. A true classic that earned every ounce of respect. This game didn't just use the Star Wars license, it elevated it. Republic Commando dropped you into the Clone Wars as the leader of an elite squad, blending tactical squad commands with intense first-person combat. The sound design, squad chatter, and atmosphere made you feel like a badass soldier in a galaxy at war. It was gritty, mature, and showed a side of Star Wars that wasn't about Jedi or lightsabers. Just soldiers trying to survive. It's short, but it's brilliant. To this day, fans still beg for a sequel, and for a good reason. The one that started it all. When Splinter Cell dropped, it was like someone had handed us the stealth genre's next evolution. We got dynamic lighting, sound-based decision, and that signature night vision glow. This was revolutionary. Every mission felt like a spy movie, and Sam Fisher instantly became an icon. It wasn't just sneaking around, it was about control, precision, and outsmarting enemies in total silence. Ubisoft's partnership with Epic's engine produced something legendary here. A game so good that even Metal Gear fans had to admit, yeah, that's impressive. A true masterpiece that changed stealth forever. This is the gold standard of tactical realism. SWAT 4 didn't want you to be a hero. It wanted you to follow procedure. You weren't mowing down terrorists. You were clearing rooms, shouting commands, and trying not to shoot a suspect who suddenly surrendered mid-gunfight. Built on Unreal Engine 2, its atmosphere was so tense you could cut it with a flashbang. The AI was unpredictable, the missions felt alive, and the sense of danger never went away. You didn't play SWAT 4, you lived it. To this day, no other tactical shooter has captured that slow burn intensity quite the same way. Now we're talking masterpiece territory. BioShock took the Unreal Engine 2 and turned it into art. Rapture, a decaying underwater city built on failed ideals, was unlike anything we'd ever seen. The atmosphere, storytelling, and gameplay came together to create one of the most hauntingly beautiful experiences in gaming. The plasmids, the moral choices, the crazy twist at the end, everything about it screamed genius. It blurred the line between shooter and philosophy lecture in the best way possible. This wasn't just a game, it was a statement, and it still holds up better than most modern shooters today. This is where arena shooting reached its final form. Unreal Tournament 2004 took everything 2003 did right, fixed everything it did wrong, and added so much more. This time we got vehicle combat, massive maps, new modes like Onslaught. This was actually multiplayer chaos perfected. The movement, the weapons, the announcer yelling, "Headshot!" It all clicked. It was stylish, competitive, and pure adrenaline from start to finish. No microtransactions, no unlocks, just skill, speed, and a flag cannon to the face. This wasn't just a sequel, it was the ultimate Unreal experience. And here we are, the undisputed king of Unreal Engine 2. Chaos Theory is not just the best Splinter Cell, it's one of the best stealth games ever made. Everything about it was polished to perfection. The level design, the AI, the gadgets, and of course, Michael Ironside's legendary voice. You could approach missions however you wanted. You could ghost through vents and see him. Or you could choke out every guard in the building. The dynamic lighting, sound mechanics, and cinematic tension made it feel way ahead of its time. This wasn't just stealth, it was art. Ubisoft at its absolute peak. It's stylish, it's smart, and it's the definition of why Unreal Engine 2 deserves respect. Chaos Theory wasn't just the best game of this engine, it defined what the engine was capable of. And that's it. Every single Unreal Engine 2 game ranked from the bottom of gaming hell all the way to stealth perfection. What a ride. From the janky budget shooters and forgotten experiments to absolute legends like Chaos Theory and BioShock. This engine gave us everything, from dumpster fires to masterpieces. And if you made it through all 4 parts of the series, you're a real one. You officially survived the Unreal 2 era. And now I want to hear your thoughts. Which games did I underrate? And which ones did I put too high? And what's your personal favorite Unreal Engine 2 title? Drop your rankings and hot takes down in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button, subscribe, and ding the bell so you don't miss future videos. And trust me, there is a lot more coming. I'm already working on more engine rankings and different kind of rankings too. Also, if you want to support the channel, you can join right here on YouTube. You'll get 1 week early access to all videos, priority on your video suggestions, and your name in the credits with the legends who make videos like this possible. And don't forget, if you want to grab some games for yourself, use my Game Evo link in the description. It's also in the pinned comment below. That way you're supporting the channel and saving money. Plus with the code ToastedGaming you'll get 3% of all your purchases. And finally, join our Discord community. Links in the description too. So thanks for watching, for supporting, and for being part of this crazy ride through gaming history. I'll see you in the next one. And remember, always save before the cutscene.